Right now, Nile Gardiner is on the line with us. Dr. Nile Gardiner, foreign affairs analyst, British conservative commentator, director of the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom of the Heritage Foundation, co-author, along with Stephen Thompson, of the new book, Margaret Thatcher on Leadership, Lessons for American Conservatives Today. Nile, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much for having me on the show, Tom.
Thanks for joining us. Margaret Thatcher, I mean, she saw her policies caused unemployment to rise up to 12% in 1984. It was the highest since the 1930s. When she put the poll tax into place, which was basically a flat tax that every single household in the UK had to pay, it caused riots. The industrial North was wiped out by Thatcherism, I mean, forever, essentially. Why? And the Conservatives never pulled more than 43% of the popular vote during her entire leadership. Why would that be a formula for anybody to emulate?
Well, Tom, firstly, Margaret Thatcher really rescued Britain from being a complete basket case in the 1970s, turning the UK into one of the most dynamic economies in the world. In fact, the most dynamic economy in Europe. Britain really was literally on its hands and knees in the 1970s after decades of socialism, socialist-style big government policies, and she firmly believed that British decline could be reversed, and she set about doing that principally by getting government...
What kind of metric are you using to suggest that Britain was on its hands and knees? Well, I mean, I spent a fair amount of time in Great Britain in the 70s. It seemed like things were going quite well. They were, I mean, there was that unwinding of the Bretton Woods Accord that happened in 71 in the United States, I think 73 in the UK when you guys went off the gold standard altogether, and we did too. And there was this effort to use monetary policy to drive trade policy, which didn't seem to work out all that well.
Well, Tom, I think that, when a great country like Britain, I do believe Britain is a truly great nation, has to go to the IMF for a loan.
But they had to go to the IMF to get dollars because we had changed because Great Britain had changed from using gold as the standard for international currency swaps, basically, for purposes of trade, to using dollars, and they just didn't have enough dollars. That doesn't mean that the country was on its hands and knees.
Yeah, Tom, it was really about building up, levels of debt that simply couldn't be paid for. And as Margaret Thatcher, famously said, the problem with socialist governments is that eventually they run out of other people's money to spend. And that was exactly the situation in Britain. It was really, humiliating.
But it was not. I mean, that IMF loan was not for debt. That IMF loan was to cover balance of payments, unless you're calling international trade debt.
Well, it was really to keep the British economy afloat. I mean, I think there was a real air of desperation.
In the context of international trade.
No, I think it's a lot more than that, Tom. And, at the end of the day, Britain was in a humiliating position. It really was, literally, the sick man of Europe. It was a nation that, frankly, was suffocating under, I think, decades of big government that had been implemented not just by the Labour Party, but also by the Conservatives as well.
Okay, so Thatcher sold off, 50 major industries that were government-owned?
Well, certainly she sold off a large number of industries. I don't know about 50 exactly. Yeah, there was.
But a large chunk of the British economy was government-owned and government-run, which you could do, and I think probably correctly you could describe as bloated and inefficient, and many Brits at the time would. But it's sort of like Ronald Reagan. He tripled the national debt in the United States, and my response to that was, give me a $3 trillion credit card, and I'll show you what it looks like to have a good time. It makes the economy look good, but after you've sold off all of the national industries, what do you do for an encore?
Well, that was just one aspect. Privatization, of course, was a key aspect of Thatcherism, and let's not forget that Margaret Thatcher won 3 general elections in a row. Of course, the 3-party system. So you mentioned the 43% figure, but you have to remember that you have both the Labour and the Liberal parties vying for office.
Right.
She was a big believer, of course,
and the Tories,
in enabling people to buy their own homes. So she sold off millions of council houses.
Right, and government-owned housing stock, basically.
Yeah, would be called public housing in America. And millions of those who are able to buy their own homes then supported Margaret Thatcher's sort of conservative revolution in the United Kingdom, they at last had a real stake in society. There was a reason for her success. I think she was able to reach out to ordinary people in Britain. Margaret Thatcher herself came from a very humble background. She was a grocer's daughter. She spent over a decade working in her father's grocer's shop. She was not someone who came from the sort of traditional, upper class elites of the Conservative Party. I think she had a
but there is no longer housing stock to sell off. There is no longer railroads to sell off. There is no longer, I mean, what are the lessons for today out of that?
Well, I think there are, of course,
we have just a minute left here.
There are more houses to sell, but I think that if you look at Britain today, one of the most successful economies in Europe, a totally different story to the sense of despair and desperation that was around in Britain in the 1970s. I do think the foundations have been laid by Margaret Thatcher for long-term prosperity in Britain.
You mean like deregulation of the banking industry?
Well, based upon the principles of economic freedom, really, and giving everyone an opportunity to move up the social ladder, which I think she strongly believed in.
And yet, but social mobility is lower now than it was in 1975.
I don't think that's
the UK.
The case at all. I do think, in Britain, you can really succeed provided you're willing to work hard and do well. I do think Britain, like America, is a tremendous land of opportunity.
The United States has become one of the least socially mobile countries in the OECD. I thought the UK was 3, 4, or 5 points below us, but
I think Britain and America both truly great nations.
Okay.
It's a real
Nile Gardiner is the author of the new book, Margaret Thatcher on Leadership: Lessons for American Conservatives Today, along with Stephen Thompson. Nile, thanks for dropping by today.
Thanks very much, Tom. A real pleasure to be here.
Good speaking with you.